and give us a full playthrough of the track, and then from there you can just basically dive into what you want to share today, man.
Sweet. Sounds good. My name's Thane. I'm from Detroit. I've been making dubstep for about 5 years. Been producing for about 10 years now. Making all kinds of stuff. Dubstep, hip-hop, a little bit of house, experimental bass. Yeah, mostly making bass music now, though. So here's the track. So that was the track. First thing I want to talk about today is the template that I use. So my template is all of these groups without any like audio or MIDI, just a blank slate with these groups and with my returns all set up. So here, I will send this real quick. This is a video of where I got this template from and a picture of the routing so it's easier to understand if you guys want to open up that picture. So all of these groups are going to different places, okay? I have my vocal group goes straight to the master. My drums and my percussion go to the pre-master. My bass group and my melodic group go to the basic chain. The sub goes to the hype chain. both the chains go to the group chain, and then to the pre-master, and then to the master. And why I do this is because all of these are getting limited and clipped within their group. And so when you have multiple limiters just working in a specific group, that makes like the limiter work less hard. Instead of just having one limiter at the end to boost everything, everything's getting boosted in different stages. And so that's how you get it pretty loud, in my opinion. So yeah, we got that. Next is talking about my returns. So I always use the same returns. I've really found that a lot of my favorite artists, some of their sound is not just like the sounds they use, but how they use them, how are they affecting them. And so now I'm going to like the same toolbox every time, using the same stuff. I have my reverbs all set up. I have a short, medium, and long one. If we want to look at them, I like little plate for reverb. Oh, how do I X that guy out? Here. Little plate for my reverbs. I have a Valhalla one for a long one with a long time. Boop. Short and long delays. One of my go-to returns is Crystallizer. It's like a granular delay. Boop. And then a phaser. Yep. Alright. So, next thing, just like using, your signature template or effects, I like to use signature drum sounds. And so what I've done in Ableton is I make my own drum racks based on hardware devices that I've had. And so this drum rack is my SP404 rack. I've picked out my favorite SP404 samples. And so it kind of, like when I'm cooking up a song, I'm not reaching to look for a new kick or for a new snare every time. So I save a lot of time in the creation process. I obviously switch those out if I'm not feeling them towards the end, but for cooking up, I like using the same things every time. So yeah, these are some of my signature sounds. Same thing with the percussion. I like using the same stuff. Like, I'm always throwing in my gong. These hats are from my OP1. Yeah, and then all of these were from the original. Besides the shadow, I think there's a shaker. Yeah. So yeah, I like using that, using same sounds, just to like build my own palette, One of my friends, I hear one of his songs and I know it's him immediately because he uses the same drums every time. And I wanted to be like that, so that's why I started doing this. Same thing with my effects. Like, I'm using a lot of the same effects in every song now, whether it be chimes, animal sounds, these risers I'm using in every track. Some stuff I made, real watery sounds. Yeah, different like flutes and stuff, thunder, zaps. So yeah, that all just helps me, at least what I'm going for is a lot of cohesion between my songs. So that's why I'm using a lot of the same sounds. Any questions so far? All right, I'll keep going. The next thing I want to talk about is my kick and sub relationship. So my kick, here's the processing on my kick. Immediately, I'm turning it into mono. Do a little bit of compression. I think that's about 3 dB. 1.5 dB of compression.
Can you let us hear Thane, like the kick, maybe the kick and like the bass soloed, so as you're talking about it we can kind of have a representation of kind of sonically.
Let's do it. Bang. So that's kick, sub, and my main basis. So really how I get the relationship how I want it. I always have my kick and snare the loudest thing in the song no matter what. And so I usually place them at around negative 14 decibels. Making them the loudest in the track. Everything after that is just a little bit quieter. So I have my kick at negative 14, my snare at negative 14. We can look.
You do that just real quick. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much consistent with your tracks. Like you'll start there and then you'll kind of like build your mix, but that you would keep your kick and your snare like pretty consistently there. That's kind of where you're at.
Yeah, I pretty much do the same thing every song now. So yep, I get them at negative 14. I like my sub sitting right underneath that at negative 15. And then my basses, sometimes they get to like negative 18, negative 17, sometimes negative 16. But usually in the ballpark of between 16 and 20 decibels. So I can hear them. That's just how I'm balancing them. Then the next important thing to me is the EQing. And so everything is supposed to live in its own range. We want our sub to be the lowest in that range from, I'd say, between, negative 30 and negative 60 to 70. This one's hitting negative 70 is the main. So your sub usually lives in this range. At the most, it's getting to 100. Close. Why I do that? I keep it in that range, so then my kick gets its own range between 90 and 120. And this one, I was a little lenient with where they were fitting in the EQ spectrum. But most of the time, they're living in those ranges. I'm boosting just a tiny bit in like the 9500 spot to, be more profound there. Boop. And then my basses, I cut them at 120. So they get 120 onwards. And sometimes I boost right around 120, and I'm boosting 6K here just for like a little more clarity and more high end.
So basically you're saying that you're thinking in 3 layers right now.
Yes.
Yeah, you have the kick layer kind of more prominent around 90, and then you have the sub layer, which is actually existing in its own space beneath the kick, and then you have what you're calling your bases, which in this case does not include your sub, and that's why there's that strong strong cutoff around 100. So it's like you have your sub, your kick, and what we're looking at here is like the bases above, not the sub, like the bases. Okay, got it.
I mean, why I do that, some people like their bases with the sub. I like to separate it because I have them doing different rhythms sometimes. You just get like better control, in my opinion, if they're separate. Bang. Another thing that helps with the kick sub relationship is side chaining. So I'll go up here. I have 2 different side chains. Well, I have 2 different ones. Is I like a separate side chain just for my sub, and then one for everything else. So what's getting side chained in my basic chain is all my melodic instruments, my effects, and my basses. So we can look in here. Basic chain. I like to use Shaper Box for side chaining, just because it's real easy and simple to use. Bang, so we can open it up. And every time the kick hits, it's ducking those parts out just a real short amount of time. And then in my hype chain, this is where my sub is getting side chained. And I turned the mix down just a tiny bit on that to make it not as pronounced. Bang. Bang. Alright. We can talk about my sub now. So the sub, this is how I'm making it. I made it in Vital. So it's an 808 that I like to use. Just a sine wave. I think I turned this up a tiny bit, which just like changes the shape a little bit. Little bit of white noise. Yeah, that's mostly it. This little envelope on the level to make it more like stabby. This envelope is on my filter also, and we can see how that. So yeah, real simple.
Thane, can you solo like what So are we looking at? You're talking about the sub now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you
That's
can you
this
solo
guy.
it so we can kind of hear what's going on?
Yeah, so real basic sine wave, a little bit of white noise. Then I compress it, add some soft clipping, and then that filter at the end with just a little bit of movement. I also turn on always glide and legato, turn that up a bit, and then I make it mono with one voice.
You pretty much always do like subs are always mono.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then what's the what are you doing with the soft clipper and the filter exactly?
So the soft clipper, it's just adding drive. Makes it beefs it up a little bit. The filter is kind of adding like a little bit of movement. That's very faint though. Like
Can you
probably
like
can't even
turn
notice that.
can you turn can you affect the soft clipper in real time a little bit so we can hear like what that actually added?
Yeah. So if this is with it off. It just like makes it dirty. Yeah. Boop. And then from there, made a mono again. I did a little bit of clipping. I like to use K-clip, and I'm clipping everything in the track, no matter what it is.
You're clipping everything in the track.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you do that?
I'm doing that now because to me it's making everything like louder, and I can get just like the loudest mix possible without having to make the limiters like work hard. And so you can see the clipping. Oh, I will use that on something else. I decided not to clip the sub in this instance because I didn't like how it sounded. But I've been clipping everything so it reaches its like max volume, basically.
For anyone that doesn't know, I'm pretty actually new to the clipping game. But for anyone that doesn't know kind of what clipping is or why you would do it, could you provide like a couple sentences on that?
Yeah, so clipping, let me get a good example of something I clipped. Okay, clip. So this snare, for example, we can see it's doing the clipping with the red line. And so what a clipper does is there's like a certain threshold. And whenever a sound is passing that threshold, it's cutting it off completely. And when you do that, if you keep doing it more and more, that's like making what's in the threshold louder, basically, to me. It can reach like just a higher level. That's probably in layman's terms.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we can open that up again.
Can I ask you a question about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so are you saying that you're using a plugin called a clipper, or like a thing called a clipper, so that your limiter doesn't have to work as hard? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah. It's basically a saturator can be turned into a clipper. I use K-Clip 3 in particular. It's like $10. Pretty easy to use. I link these, so I turn up. I turn up my in, so it usually starts at 0. And you can see this is the original sound. When I add some clipping, everything past the threshold gets clipped, and it's basically turning up everything underneath the threshold.
Interesting. Is it adding like a distortion too, then?
It can. I use it to taste, so I don't like hearing that distortion at all. So once I start to hear it, I turn this back a little bit.
Okay.
And this is something I do on every sound unless I don't like it. Recently, I'm not liking it on subs and kicks that much, but everything else I'm using it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Boop. So, back to my sub. So we start off no clipping. Amp for some more distortion. And that's at 34%. I really like using amp because you can choose between all these different styles and really play with it. Then I get into some OTT at 22%. This is a multi-band compressor. Really not doing too much with it. I just like how it sounds sometimes. So I do that. EQ, I've just rolled off the low end at 20 with a brick wall. More saturation with Trash 2, if anyone's familiar. I like using the tape saturation in here real subtly. And then Ozone, I'm making it mono just in case anything added some width. Then a K-clip again. I think I just put this on here. It's not doing anything. Yeah. If anything, it's just like clean. Yep, and this utility is just turning it down sometimes. So that's on my sub.
Does
Any
anyone
questions
have
on
questions about the sub? Or really anything that we've gone over so far?
I'll ask a question about the sub. Still getting my head around sub. So it's like you have a bass, you have a kick, and then you have a separate sub, and then your sub is it playing the same thing as your bass line?
Not all the time. Sometimes I do have it playing the same in the track, but I think here it's playing the same as one of the melodic instruments. Oh no, it's doing the same as the bass.
Okay.
So yeah, we can listen to both of those too if we want. Oh, I'm sorry?
She was asking.
Was that your sub there?
Yeah, that
asking
was
if that's
sub
your
and
sub.
bass.
Sub and bass. Okay.
Yeah.
Solo the sub for her.
Here's
Okay,
our.
so
What were you saying?
it sounds like in this case it is like your bass line an octave lower. Is that right?
Yeah,
In this
yeah.
case?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But and you have them on. Sorry, because I'm driving, I can't see, so I'm just going by what I hear.
Yeah.
So you have them on two different tracks, like programmed as two different things, and you're treating them in two different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And you do that basically in everything?
Yeah, I do that in every song just so I get better control of the sub.
So from what I was seeing, I think it'd be really good for everybody to visualize the difference of where the sub is hitting and then the frequencies where the kick is hitting to show them where you can kind of give them each other space.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, how can we do that? You can open up this EQ. So this is my sub. This is my sub living right here, mainly in 70, but it gets rolled off at 300. My bass sounds, we want to open this up. They are starting at 120 and they go throughout the entire spectrum up to 20,000. Oh, don't want to do that.
I know
Yeah,
your track. Oh, I'm sorry, Adam.
No, go ahead.
I'm just curious, like, how common, because you're doing, like, dubstep, like, style, right, for this. So I'm just curious, what other styles, like, you know, say, like, in house. I know you said you like house, too. We listen to a lot of house. Would you say that's a common thing that they're doing in, like, you know, deep house, like soulful, jazzy house? Or is this very much more like the bassy music that does this?
I've seen people do it in house, but with that, they might have their sub be in their kick drum. Yeah. And so they're using a real low kick to where they might not need the sub. But I do know house tracks that will have a separate house or a sub layer as well.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
I mean, I think you get this part, Lauren, but you know, the sub is like a frequency band. It's not just like a sound, you know. It's like a frequency band from what, like 20 to 60 hertz. So it's like, you know, I make rock records as well, and those have sub energy as well, like in the kick, maybe a little bit in the bass. So it's like, yeah, it's a frequency band, and in this case, as Thane is showing, he's kind of like using a dedicated instrument to hit that. But in rock stuff, it might be coming more from like the kick drum and the frequencies in the kick, or maybe a bass, or if it's like there's a synth bass in a rock track, that might be hitting a little bit more in that frequency band.
Right, yeah. I guess just in the last year, since hanging out with more producers, specifically of electronic music, people would talk about their sub and specifically even call it like synonymous with their bass. So it was the first time I started thinking about it as it could be a separate element. That's why I'm just kind of getting used to that concept that it can be its own element, not just a frequency band in a kick. Or yeah.
Devin, Lex, I saw you guys.
Yeah, so let me make sure I understand this properly. So on every instrument you're using the clipper, right?
Yeah.
And then all those instruments are categorized into like 5 different categories.
Mm-hmm.
And on those categories, you put a limiter on each category.
Yep, all of them besides the vocals.
Okay. And do you do a limiter over the master track after?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it's just,
And,
the final limiter just doesn't have to work as hard. Just
yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
okay.
I actually put 2 limiters at the end. And both of them, I like share the workload between them. And every group is being limited besides the vocals. My sidechain groups are being limited as well. And then yeah, on the pre-master, we can look at the pre-master. So with my pre-master, we can just go over the limiting real quick, and then I'll come back to this. But I have one Pro L, just doing a little 3 dB boost, and then my ozone. Also barely working. And yeah, I just find that when you use more instead of just one, it just makes it easier to work, and you can make it louder. Works better on the numbers.
Is that common? I'm coming
Thank you.
from like,
I appreciate that.
I got you.
yeah, I'm coming from a bit of a different space as far as like the producers that I'm around a lot. Of course, I'm around some electronic producers, but in the electronic music space and like bass space, is that pretty common that people would actually put a limiter on like a lot of the group buses and stuff? Is that a common practice?
I think so. A lot of people I talk to are doing it now. Yeah, I know this is how Skrillex does it. And this guy Ahi, I tagged his video at the start.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of tutorials on YouTube for EDM and bass music, and this is something he teaches. So I'm sure thousands of producers are using this now. But yeah, he broke down a Skrillex song and saw that he was doing this and tried it out for himself. So then I thought, if it works for Skrillex, it's gotta work for me.
Yeah.
And I started doing it, and my stuff gets louder. I think it's cleaner. Yeah, and I build this all into my template, so I don't have to like reroute everything every time I'm trying to make a song. It's just built in.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Lex, you got a question?
Question's kind of similar. A concept you talked about in your last breakdown, which is basically this: the use of the limiter and the clipper to kind of make your sound cleaner and louder has been something that has benefited me. Even though we mix very you doing very different styles, I use that method to clean up the drums and stuff going out to my mixer, and it's made it distort less, so it's been really useful. And I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on, I guess, the concept with the limiter part, which you kind of just did, but if you could talk a little more about that. And then I guess I have another question, which is a little similar to Lauren, which is with regards to the bass, I've found that in my reggae style mixes, if I kind of boost the sub, I just kind of feel the bass more. And I don't really know what I'm doing in any of this. I just kind of follow my ears. But some of your tips have really helped me to shape my sound a little bit better.
That's all.
So yeah, if you could elaborate a little bit, that'd be awesome.
Sweet. So I guess for sub level, I like to put in a reference track. This is Nikita the Wicked, Like Me. He's a bass music producer, popping off right now, playing a bunch of big festivals. I like the way his stuff sounds, and I thought immediately when I heard the original of the song, I wanted to make something like him. So I use his song as a reference, and what I do is I solo it, and I open up some of my monitoring plugins. So let's open up Span. Span shows you the whole frequency spectrum like an EQ. But also, if you see in the top left, it'll tell you exact hertz where you're at, and then in the top right, it's telling you how loud it gets. So when you open it, I just look at the sub and see where the sub is hitting on their master. And so I turn it down. It's turned down right now just so we can listen at a normal volume. But usually on a master, I'm getting my sub to hit -28 at the most, but I usually like it right around -30. So that's how I level my sub.
So you'll use a that's interesting. So you're saying from like the get-go of a track, you might, I know references are common in like mixing and mastering, for instance, pretty ubiquitous in all genres. But you're saying like when you're starting a track, you might basically pull in a reference, like once you know kind of the direction you want to take, you might pull in a reference and kind of look at something like how much sub energy it has and kind of use that as a guide or an inspiration in building it out.
Yeah,
like from the not just in the mixing, but like when you're kind of designing it.
Yeah. So I do that at the start, but I'm not like really trying to hit -30 until I'm mastering. In my mix down phase, I like it at like -36. So then once I master, I'm getting 6 extra decibels and it ends at -30. But yeah, I definitely think about it while I'm cooking up, but it's not like something that needs to happen right away. I always wait for the end to like really dial it in. The next part, so clippers with limiters. When you use a clipper before the limiter, someone say something? No, okay. When you use a clipper before the limiter, it just allows the limiter to work less hard, because you can see, like, let's go here. This is my clipper on my pre-master. as you can see, the clipper peaks it at negative 4.7 decibels. So whenever the signal is going above the threshold 4.7 decibels, it just gets cut off completely. And so what it's doing is everything underneath that threshold is being able to like reach its like maximum potential of how loud it can be. So then instead of the limiter, like without this, if the clipper wasn't there, the limiter would be starting to kick in at these peaks at over the threshold at 4.7 decibels. And so because we cut all of that off, the limiter doesn't have to think about that, and it can worry about everything underneath that threshold.
Do you find yeah, so basically what you're getting at is you're using a clipper to trim off. All right, if this is like the sound wave, it's going above, let's say this here, you're using the clipper to just shave off any of the peaks above that point, so that way your limiter doesn't have to work as hard. And you're able
and it's
to
not catching all those peaks. It just worries about where the threshold is at. And so when you,
I guess from my understanding, I guess like it's chopping the top of the transients off, which is then saturating the rest of the sound, like kind of boosting it, and then the limiter doesn't have to catch up to that. It's already cut down below that.
Yeah.
So it's basically whatever's going to make you redline. It's kind of taking those harmonics or frequencies out of the sound, and then it's kind of saturating and boosting the rest to make it perceive louder.
Exactly.
And what do you find the result of that is in your mix downs and ultimately your master? Like the fact that you're kind of using clippers in a series. You're using them on individual tracks, you're using them on buses, and ultimately you're probably even using a clipper again on your master. Are you?
Yeah. So
And
pretty
so what do
much
you
every
find-
time I'm using a limiter, there's a clipper before it. So in here, I think even in my, no, not in my sidechain groups, but in all my regular like instrument groups, there's a clipper before the limiter.
And like sonically, just like speaking in terms of like sound, not even technicality, but like sonically, what do you find the effect or benefit is of like clipping at these different stages as opposed to just slamming your limiter at the end in your master?
I think you can get it louder and cleaner. Yeah, just from doing that. So before this, I was making music and mastering, and it might have gotten to negative 10 LUFS at the end. With this, I'm mastering around negative 7. So it's giving me just more volume.
I have a quick question. Whenever, I mean, obviously you're doing everything like in the DAW right now, but if you're using live instruments, for instance, would it be beneficial to use a limiter on live instruments to keep them from hitting the or a clipper or something to keep them from hitting it so hard at the end of it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I can maybe speak to that because I'm a little bit in that world, and I'm like been mastering stuff in that world recently. Yeah, I mean, there's certain stuff. I mean, like Thane said, a clipper is gonna chop off a bit of your tops of your transient. So it's like, if you have a guitar transient, right? You have a guitar transient, the spike, the attack of the sound, and maybe you feel like you can't turn up your guitar because the attacks are like spiking out. If you were to run a clipper on that and shave off even a half a decibel or a decibel, you're going to be able to turn your whole guitar up louder to where it's more even in the mix, you know, and less like those attacks are poking out. So from my understanding, clipping is like common as well in all sorts of rock stuff. Maybe not on every track, but maybe on like snares and maybe guitars. You know, you can kind of do a deep dive, but yeah, people definitely use them.
So that would kind of work hand in hand with the compressor then, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
similar. They're both dynamic. They would both be considered like dynamic processors in the sense of like controlling your volume.
Nice.
Yes, sir. Back to this. And so in my melodic group, I have, you know, brass, didgeridoo, a yangin, which is a type of Chinese stringed instrument, flute, and a kavala. And all of those get individually clipped. They're clipped. These got clipped individually. Clip. And then they also get clipped and limited on the group. Bang. Alright. Next thing I wanted to talk about was how I made these basses. All in Serum. So we can open up Serum. Really just sine waves. Let me show you what it sounds like with all the processing. Now I'm gonna have to close this out and open it possibly. That's just the imager, we're fine. So this is what it sounds like without any processing. It's probably really quiet. Let's turn this up. Oh no. I am gonna need this. So I have to save and open it up again. Sometimes some of my plugins just turn off and I gotta reopen it.
Do you remaster these or remix them live, Thane? Because I know you're kind of in an electronic bass music space. I know you play live a lot, and obviously live systems translate different, especially in the low end. It's a pretty big difference compared to even a pro studio. Do you do anything different for that, or do you kind of mix and master already assuming, hey man, I'm playing live, I'm gonna kind of put it in that space and I'm just gonna like upload it to Spotify with that profile already? Just a brief, that's a big topic, but
yeah,
what are your
I
thoughts
used
on that?
to do that. So I used to master everything just to be played on big systems, because at the end of the day, I just wanted it to sound best live. Now I recently learned from a friend, he is bouncing, when he masters something, he is bouncing them all out in different settings. So one will be for Spotify, one's just to play live, one's just for Bandcamp. And so each different setting has its own use. I haven't done that myself, but I know people are doing that.
So you'll basically, right now, you'll basically mix and master, like the version of this track that we uploaded, because we just released this track. If you guys haven't heard it, you can check it out on Spotify. The version that you released, you would basically, if you were gonna play it in a live set, you would play that exact same master. Yeah. All right, so we've basically done sub. We've done sub. We did kind of sub kick relationship. A bit of the breakdown between the sub and the bass. Super helpful. Super dope. What's next?
So now we're gonna talk about the Serum patch. Something I tried doing in this song was using one patch to make all of my bass sounds. So all of these come from my first patch. They're just either affected in different ways, something's changed about them, they might be played an octave higher, maybe more reverb. But why I'm doing this is it kind of makes the whole song sound cohesive if all the sounds are coming from the same original source. So I actually tried that out for the first time in this song and thought it was solid. So I've been doing that. So you can see in this patch how it's made. Sine wave and oscillator A, sine wave and oscillator B 2 octaves up, and 7 semitones up. So I believe that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth up. So the first oscillator, regular octave. Second one is 2 octaves and a fifth up. Second one also has a little bit of unison at 3 to give it width. And you can see the line that's at 1, it's in the middle, right? At 2, it becomes a little wider. At 3, it's getting even wider. Yeah, so instead of just having the source be in the middle, it gets a little bit of width. And then I have a little bit of noise. The sub is going directly out in this, but it gets cut out. So we can just probably turn that off. It's being filtered as well with the MG Low 12. Little bit of drive and fat on that. And what that does is that turns up here what we're looking for. It's boosting the sound.
Can you play this sound, Thane?
What's giving it the movement is this LFO right here at a 1/4 triplet rate. And that LFO is on the level of both oscillators and the filter. So you can see the filter moving like that. Let's see the sound.
Can you disable the filter? I think the level is self-explanatory, but can you disable the filter and then? Okay.
Just like subtle movement on that. Another thing that was important to the sound is FM from B. Yeah, frequency modulation. So the is being modulated by oscillator B, and that's a 41%. And I always, for the most part, I keep my basses in mono, add legato, porta time. Effects, not a lot of effects, slight distortion with an LFO on that too, I believe. Just a tiny bit for subtle movement and the phaser. It just beefs it up a little bit. So that's it for that one. And then I had all of this processing after Serum. So it makes it sound like this. So I made a mono with the utility. This is getting clipped as well. Getting clipped about negative 3.5 decibels. I did automate this auto filter, but I decided against it and kind of just left it in there. This amp at 11% dry wet, so not too much, but I did like the boost setting on it, so I kept it. A little bit of gain automation. Yeah, and then this EQ. Yeah, I found these frequencies in around 235 to be causing some problems, so I cut those out. And there, we can listen to all of them.
That's sick. So you have, yeah, that's real cool. So it's like a call and response. You have like these different bass layers that are talking to each other with different amounts of, kind of decent amounts of distortion or saturation, and one of them sounds like it has a bunch of reverb on it or something.
Yeah, so this one has reverb and also delay. Just because I wanted to like create some space between the call, which was this one, and my response bass. And that's just something I've been trying to do in all of my songs, is have more deliberate call and response. So yeah, I've been really trying to lock that in. And I thought this was a good song for it. So this was the call. And this was the call, full transition, a response. Yeah. So yeah, the only difference in this one, I believe, was the delay and the reverb. And the timing of the LFO, so it's only a bar, or it is a bar compared to the quarter triplet rate of this one. So it just like, it has more sustain, is more drawn out. Yeah. Let's see what else. I think that was it in terms of why it was different. More FM from B, just to make it different somehow.
What does that do?
FM from B.
Yeah, what is that?
So that has frequency modulation. So the first initial oscillator A is modulated by oscillator B. And it kind of just adds like this, its own characteristic. We can see it without it. Kind of just adds a little bit more flavor. Frequency modulation to me makes up like most of my bass sounds. I know for a lot of other people too. Yeah.
And you would keep your whole bass group is in mono?
Yes.
Is that normal?
This one.
Is that normal for you, or would sometimes like your mid basses or like the higher frequencies of your bass, you would like separate those and let those be in stereo, but just keep the low ones in mono? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Do you ever do that, or are you pretty much mono across the board in all of your tracks with the basses?
I do it just how you said. So like my lowest basses are mono. It's kind of like a upside down triangle. My low sounds are centered, and then as we move up the frequency spectrum, they're getting wider and wider. In this one in particular though, I think I just kept them in the middle because there was so much going on. I wanted them in the middle. I wanted all my instruments and the vocals on the outside. So yeah, so we can keep going here. Check out this one. This one, all I did was turn up the octave. So you can compare. Yeah. I don't think any of these got any additional processing or reverb. We can move on to this one. All I did on this one was I changed the wave shape. Instead of a sine wave, we went saw.
You went full alien with that one.
Yeah, and that wave just gives it its own characteristic. I automated the octave, so this one is one down. This one's a little bit higher. Yeah, just to give it some more variety. And then these two were made from this one. Yeah, let's check this one out. Just automating the rate, pretty much.
Hey Thane, can you play a whole like maybe 8 or 16 bar section before that? So now that we kind of have a reference of like, you know, we have a reference of what these different layers are, just to give us the whole mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, in context of like, you know, 8 or 16 bars.
Let's do it. We'll listen to this second drop section. Yeah, so that's that. This one I don't even think I think I just changed the rate. Yeah, kept it a sine wave. Yeah, those are the bases. They all get clipped. A little bit of amp. This one I added some movement with auto pan tremolo on 1 bar rate. And then all of them get processed in the group as well with OTT, which is another multi-band compressor. EQ8, as I said, it's cutting at 120, and boosting 6K and around 200, 174. This ozone is where I would add the width, but I just kept it as it was because the track is so busy. And then a clipper and limiter. Yeah, so you can see what the clipper is doing. When using the clipper on the basses, you can really hear the distortion it adds, so I use that just like sparingly. -2 dB of clipping at the most.
Tree, did you have a question? I saw your hand was raised.
Hey, sorry, that's me. I'm home now, so I'm on.
You guys are shape-shifting over there.
Yeah, sorry. Having questions, and then I'm like, wait, no, I don't need to ask that. And then I'm like, wait, I want to ask that. No, I don't need to ask that. I'll just ask the last one that I was thinking. Do you check your mixes in mono too? Is that a thing? Am I remembering correctly that everybody checks their mixes in mono?
So I have all of that set up in my monitoring rack. So the reason I have a pre-master channel where all my, mastering effects go, and then a main, is so the main is just like untreated. I can listen to my reference without all the mastering. And then in here on my main is all like my monitoring plugins like Vox and Go, Ulean to check the LUFS. This is something I just got, Mini Meters, if you're familiar. It's a third-party plugin outside of Ableton, but it's like a visualizer, all different types. But then at the front I have my utility, and this is where I'm checking between mono and stereo.
And like, when you do that, what are you listening for, and like, what is it?
I'm just listening for like changes, really. I'm hoping that there's no like phase problems between any of my sounds. So like sometimes you'll switch to mono and you lose some type of instrument completely, or things that were wide you can't hear in the mix. And so it's kind of to just like troubleshoot those problems.
Okay. So you're looking for consistency between the two.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Cool. And then it's also real. We were admiring Serum, which we definitely need to get. And I thought it was cool how the one oscillator affected the other one. So we just have to get it.
Yeah. Sweet.
Does anyone else have what's coming up for you guys? Do you have questions? What are your thoughts right now?
I have a couple questions. You guys can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So actually on that note of mono versus stereo, like my understanding was that you either mix in mono or stereo. So like why would you mix some tracks in stereo? Like how does that, like if you're bouncing to a stereo master, then why do you need tracks to, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, so I do everything is done in stereo. I'm just checking what it sounds like in mono. So when I release the track, right, I want to know what it's going to sound like on people's phones, or I want to know what it's going to sound like on their laptop, or, earbuds. So I'm checking all of those different things, just to see if there's any problems, if a whole instrument goes away, or if they can't hear anything.
Okay. And also, I'm curious, when you mix, do you mix on headphones, or do you have monitors, or both? Just personally.
I do both. Yeah, it just depends where I'm at and what I'm trying to do. If it's too late, I might just be on headphones.
Yeah, because I sometimes I'll have a lot of success with headphones, and then when I play it on a speaker, it doesn't translate. So I don't know why that is. Like especially with the low end, And actually, I had the same question as Adam when he mentioned like translating to live sound speakers, because that's what I saw a lot. But yeah, just like, why is that? Like, when you'll get a really good mix on headphones, and everything looks balanced on your program, and it sounds great, and you bounce it sounds great, and then all of a sudden on your speaker or in the car or whatever, it doesn't sound good.
Basically what it comes down to is like the settings of the headphones. They might not have a good bass response. A lot of headphones don't.
I see.
And so yeah, it's kind of giving you like an untrue representation of what the song is sometimes. And so like one of the most important things is like your listening environment when you're mixing. You want to know what your room sounds like. You want to know what your headphones sound like. And so you want to listen to, you know, your favorite songs or songs that are like you think are mixed and mastered really well in your headphones and where you're mixing at. And you want to use those as a reference to dial your own songs.
I think I could use reference tracks more. So, and then I just have one more question. At one point you described that you added like 6K to your bass to give it clarity. Is that like, do you always do that frequency range, or you kind of go based off the particular sound and like whatever sounds good?
Yeah, I guess it just depends on the sound and the whole song in general. Like if there's a lot of instrumentation up in that range, I might not boost that because it'll get muddy. But in this instance, I just wanted more girth out of the bass and just more of that high frequency side.
Okay.
To pop
Awesome,
in,
thank you.
to pop in super quick on Megan's kind of inquiry with different systems. My understanding is like different speakers have a different frequency curve. So it's like, you know, I'm using Yamaha HS8s in my studio. I'd have to look at their frequency curve, but I think they're pretty flat. Like they're not hyping the low end at all, right? Well, they're not even going to produce the subs unless I have a sub. But I have a Bose S1 here, like a standalone Bose, and I'll think the low end sounds one way on a track, but then you listen to it there, and it does sound different because that hypes the low end. Or like Dr. Dre's Beats headphones, right? I think those are pretty known to hype low end. So my understanding from working with mastering engineers and stuff is like you want to have a neutral, you want to try to find a pretty flat and neutral situation to mix, and good headphones, flat frequency response. But then part of the mastering process especially is when you're mastering or working with a mastering engineer, part of their job is to check, quote, translation, meaning how does this mix translate to a phone? How does this mix translate to laptops or a car? So in short, I think part of it is like these different systems have different frequency curves. Like your car and my car are going to have even different frequency curves based on the system that we use. So honestly, I talk with some of my friends about this, but it's a huge challenge and headache when you get to mastering, is like trying to make sure that your song translates as good as possible on every system. And especially in a world where most people are listening on cell phones now, it's a real challenge, but it's part of it. And I think you want to have a pretty neutral environment to mix in, but then you like check your translation, and you're always, I think, making little compromises, with that. But that's my understanding, is these different systems actually have different EQ curves. Consumer speakers have different EQ curves than neutral, like studio monitors.
Yeah.
Someone on Reddit once said that I always remembered. Thank you, Reddit person. That it doesn't really matter what you mix on. Like, I just got HS8s last year too. Before that, I had Rocket 8s, and I loved them. They sounded great, but they're definitely more biased to making your bass sound better, right? And so when I was trying to make that decision, I went on Reddit, and they were like, it doesn't really matter what you mix on, just you got to know your system. And we just got some Bear Dynamic headphones too, right? But before that, it was just my car, my monitors, and then our Audio Technica, like $50 headphones. And I just knew like what the difference was between each of them to try to get them to sound the best between the three of them, right? And I'm not mastering, that's just for mixing, but I thought that was valuable. It's like, as long as you know what the response of whatever you're listening is, you can work with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and actually, when it comes to live settings, like how does an artist come best prepared for like a large scale PA? Like, is it just having like good mastered tracks?
Yeah, I'd say so. And making sure, at least for me, I've done this a plenty amount of times. One of my first sets I played at a festival, I played an all original set, all mastered by me. And I ruined the sub in all of them. And so my friend said my whole set sounded underwater. And yeah, you just want your sub to be clean. And definitely not too loud, or else that's gonna happen. And that goes for any instrument. Yeah. Last two things were instrumentation and vocal mixing. So in here, in my melodic group, this is where all my instruments go. I have a go-to brass sound that I use in almost all my songs right now. And that's in Contact. From Output, I believe. Didgeridoo was from the original Yangin. Chinese stringed instrument that sounds like this. And what I did was I pretty much just listened to something in the original. Oh, I don't have that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I produced the original, and that's definitely mimicking like the acoustic guitar part.
Yeah.
It's simplified as far as you have it on one note, and we had it on a power chord, but that's super cool.
Yeah, thank you. I think I just did that by ear, just by listening.
I'm gonna sue you for that, man, ripping me off like that. Yeah, my lawyers actually just sent you something to your inbox,
no.
So you'll see that tomorrow morning.
So yeah, the Yangin. This flute. Kavala. Oh. And that's it for all the instruments. I affected them all in different ways. This one got a lot of delay. Let's just listen to this. And so they're all at different widths too. My brass is the lowest instrument, so I put it in the center. Didgeridoo was next, and that got a little bit of width, if you can see. In Ableton, things can be panned in mono or they can be panned in stereo. So you just right click on the panning and you can switch it to stereo pan mode. So I did that on the didgeridoo and I did that on the yangin, because I like my more melodic instruments on the outside. Same with the flute. I think the flute, because it was the highest, it got the most width. Yeah, and then the Kavala I kept pretty wide as well, just because I liked how it transitioned with the width.
So with that's interesting. So with the stereo panning, so obviously a mono source, right? One source. You just pan it left or pan it right. But you're saying that with the stereo panning situation, you are actually like controlling both sides of the stereo signal, how far they're panned from center, both sides.
Yeah.
What's that called?
Exactly.
What is this? Do you know what this is called? Like stereo panning?
Stereo panning, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says stereo pan mode.
Yeah.
That's what I'd call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Logic Pro has that, and it's just called stereo panning.
Okay.
That's dope.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we got to get on that.
Yeah, I don't do that too often, but yeah, I really liked how everything had its own width. And it made things cleaner, less muddy. So yeah, I think that was it for all the instruments. Some got different delays, different reverbs. Yeah.
Can you solo all the instrument parts, not the like discluding the bass and the drums, and play like 8 bars of it, just to give us an idea of the overall,
instruments?
Yeah, the overall instrument mix. So now can you take like that same section? I don't know if there's basses in that, but can you add the basses so we can hear like the interaction of the bass parts with no drums, but just bass and instruments?
So it fades in here. I'll start it halfway through.
All right, sick. Now can you play that? You're like, dude, Adam, you're really going in director mode. I need you to calm down.
It's all good.
Can you play that same? Can you play that same section and add the drums now, or just play it with the whole mix? Just play the whole mix.
The last thing is vocal mixing. So with all of these, this was the main vocal stem. Getting a lot of reverb. I wanted it further in the back because the bass was really up front, so I wanted this further. And it gets a little bit of delay, the 3 rate. This one I had cut out different sections that I didn't want delayed. Here are some ad-libs. Here was a little like chop I did. I reversed some vocals too.
Are you talking super soft, Thane, or is my system just freaking out?
I could have been talking soft. My bad.
It might be my. There we go.
Oh no, I muted the reverse. These are just the background chants with a lot of reverb and delays, and then some extra harmony vocals for the backgrounds. So yeah. Alright, also same thing as the melodic group. Everything is different widths. So I wanted my main vocal in the center, part of the mains, the ad-libs I wanted wide, stutter I wanted in the center, background vocals I wanted center, the harmonies I wanted wide. Besides that one, I just thought it lives in a different frequency than the main. It's really higher. Open your eyes and let the light and hear the music of your heart. So I thought that could just be layered in the center with the main. So yeah, that was some of that, and then my main vocal rack. I used a rack that Carl Roth showed me. I didn't use everything he uses, but I did do a lot of it. And so, first EQ is the treatment, looking for different problems with the vocals. I liked how they sounded already. Like, if this wasn't a remix and these vocals weren't treated at all, I would have had to do a lot more. But because it was already mixed well, like, I didn't have to do a lot. So I just cut out 120 to make room for all my sub and basses. Or just sub and, kick. Everything living underneath. This little altar boy, sometimes I'll play with the formants on different words to get different effects. But in this case, I just used it for a drive. Saturn 2, it's a saturator. Just a little bit of drive. I'm not too familiar with Saturn yet, so I didn't go crazy. Yeah, just a little bit of that. More subtractive EQ if we have an issue with anything, or if we have plosives or some sibilants. That's what this EQ would be for. And then I'm clipping it again. A lot of clipping. So at the most negative 2.5 decibels of clipping, and that's for it to get louder. I did soothe at the end. I forgot what I used this for. I don't even think I used that. It's just on. So yeah, that's normally how I treat vocals. Yeah, just like a light treatment. And it gets sent to my pre-master, so it misses the sidechain. There's no limiter on the vocal group, because you really don't want that affecting the dynamics of it. So yeah, it just gets sent to my pre-master. And then on my pre-master, this is my mastering chain. This is what Matt Davis kind of uses. He has a lot of outboard gear, so I kind of just remade it my own way. But he's where I learned the clipper limiter combo from. Matt Davis is like one of the top engineers for bass music right now. Yeah, he has a studio in Florida. So many big artists use him. He's got a lot of information out online, YouTube videos. He also teaches on a website called synthesis.audio. And so, you know, whenever he puts something out, I'm watching it to just like get better at what I'm doing. So at the start, I put a compressor. The compressor it'll do at the most like 1 dB of compression. It's just like smoothing things. That's something I learned from Carl. He said, you just want it to move. And just a bump. Not too much of compression. Then for the EQ, this is for my clipper. So the clipper doesn't get affected by the low end too much. I am putting an EQ before it, cutting the lows -4 dB with the shelf. So anything under 100 hertz is down -4 dB. And this is so the clipper can work better. It's not being worried about the peaks of the lows. It's just clipping things at the top, at the higher end, above 100 hertz. And then we have our clipper. Again, I don't like too much clipping on the master, just like 2 or 3 at the most. Then because I lowered the lows, I am boosting them up again 4 dB, which is what I cut in this one. So it was like I didn't even, affect that at all, right? They cancel each other out. With my Pro Q, really didn't do much in here. I just cut brick wall at 20. Some people do this, some people don't. I am leaning towards not to do this now because what you're cutting out is stuff you can feel. Is how my friend explained it to me. So our hearing goes to 20 hertz. Our hearing range is between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. And that's this whole spectrum, right? Under that, though, we can still feel that information. So by cutting this, some people say you are cutting out important information that you may not hear, but you can feel. And so in this one, I did make the cut at 20 hertz, but now I'm leaning towards not doing that for that reason. So we have a Pro Q. Sometimes, I will use a match EQ, which is by Ozone. And what a match EQ does is you can use a reference track and match that EQ of your reference. So if, there's a song that you really like the master of, you can put it in here. You can set a match EQ. And then on your master, your EQ is being matched to your reference. And I really like doing that, like, if I'm having different troubles with how it's sounding. But I liked how this one sounded, so that was fine. Something similar to that too that I've been using is called tonal balance. And so the match EQ will match the EQ spectrum of your reference track. Tonal balance control is going to match the levels of everything in the spectrum. So if you can see, this blue line is references of a lot of electronic tracks, bass heavy tracks, which is what I'm going for. And the white line is my song. So you really want it to fit this curve. And so if anything was out of place, I'd turn it up or turn it down. But yeah, I thought it sounded good. Bang. So that's match EQ and tonal balance control. Radiator, I use Motown Beef Clean at like 5%. This is just a 5% of saturation. Then we got our limiters. This one's doing most of the work at 3 gain. So you can do that. It's not even hitting like the threshold. It's just boosting. Then in this ozone, this one's doing a little bit as well. I usually keep this at -6 when I'm doing my mix down. I think I changed this afterwards. I usually only do -3 dB of limiting on my second one. And so this one, when I'm preparing my mix down before mastering, I want my ceiling at 6 dB. So then my mix down peaks at -6 dB, and that gives the mastering engineer 6 dB to work with. Yeah, so I'm not just giving them something full and they have nothing to do. But yeah, this one was limited a little bit extra. Bang. And then this at the end is my imager. Just to see what it looks like. Keeping my sub mono and then widening every other band. So this band is between 200 and 2K, band 2. Band 3 is between 2K and 5K, or band 3 I mean. And band 4 is 5K to 20K. And so within each of these ranges, just like that bottom triangle I was talking about, upside down triangle, I want my low sounds to be centered, and I want, as we move up the frequency spectrum, I want them wider and wider. Besides vocals, a lot of time I keep in the middle. So that is that. I actually added one more limiter at the end. 1 dB of gain. So yeah, ended up using 3 limiters on my master here. And yeah, we can check the LUFS to see how loud we got it. This was for my mix down, so
I think I did the final
push.
kind of mastering.
Yeah.
Remember?
But yeah, I usually would have my mix downs at -14 LUFS and try to master them to about -8 LUFS. Yeah. That's about it for my mastering.
When you were saying about you were measuring the LUFS of your kick and your bass first, and then so can you explain that a little bit for me?
Yeah, so for those, for my kick and my sub, I'm measuring its decibel value. So if we go in here in Ableton, we can see that it hits at -14.
Oh, okay, that's the decibels, not the LUFS. Okay, sorry, I was in the car for that, so okay.
You're good. I only check LUFS on my mix down and on my master.
Right. Okay.
Just want to say a little appreciation. Like, yeah, learned a lot about having different frequencies sit in different spots, and makes sense to have the bass on the down the center, from what I understand, and then the higher frequencies, do you have them like equally on the left and right, or like do you have them like panned to the far left and right and like dance around a little bit?
I like to keep it like symmetrical, but I know other engineers will put like, you know, piano on the left or a guitar on the right. But I kind of like space them out where they're both symmetrical. The piano might be wider than the guitar.
That was awesome. I feel like, you know, it really helped for where I'm at to like connect a lot of dots for me and just like create a lot of clarity in the way that I just see everything and like the framework and everything. So that's cool, and I really appreciate everything you shared, and thank you, Adam, for bringing this together. So thank you.
I'm glad, of course.